is the matter? For those of you who don't know me, I'm Georgia Kovett. I'm the police judge here in Georgetown. What we're doing tonight is bringing you some information from the police task force that was put together. The task force has been working over the last couple of months to look at various pieces of information, what would happen with reconstituting a police department for Georgetown, what would happen if we worked with the county IGA. No conclusions have been reached. We're simply giving information out to everybody. There are handouts right here. We want to make sure that everyone has. Also, all of this information will be on the website, so people can have that information. At the end of these presentations, we'll take some questions and comments. Also, there's a questionnaire there, and you are free to please send in your comments and questions by Friday, so we can compile them. And you can also email them to the town clerk at townofgeorgetown.us, which is also on your handouts. So what I want to do right now is have a quick introduction of the police task force panel. Does everybody by name say who you are, and then we'll talk about the speakers. Go ahead, Michael, we'll start with you.
I'm Michael Richter.
I'm Ellen Elliott.
I'm Amanda Cooper.
Mary Smith.
Pete Werlin.
And we don't have here John McWilliams, who is also part of our task force. So tonight we have Captain Rubin here to talk about the county IGA, and Dennis Durham, our town administrator, who's going to chat about what it would take to reconstitute the Georgetown Police Force. After that, we'll take questions and comments. Welcome, come on in, grab some handouts. We're just about to start. We do have some people online, just FYI. And if you know anyone who would like to see the handouts, please feel free to take some when you leave at the end, or let people know they're on the website. So Captain Rubin, shall we start with you?
Sure.
Absolutely.
So I did not come with a prepared speech, so this is off the cuff. And I will preface this by telling you, there may be some questions you have that I just don't have the answer to. I just may not know. If that's the case, I'll just tell you, I don't know, I'll have to find out. This is an opportunity for us to have this back and forth and have a dialogue and get some more information. But I'm not here to blow smoke. I think you deserve honest answers. And you may have a little bit of my opinion sprinkled in there. I have to watch that. So I got to be more, make sure I'm professional. Basically, for several months now, the Clear Creek County Sheriff's Department has been providing police services to the town of Georgetown through a IGA, though it is a temporary or a limited IGA. And there certainly is a limited amount of a police presence on a daily basis with the sheriff's department in terms of patrolling Georgetown. But I'm sure you've seen us out there. We have been handling calls for service in the town. We have made that information available for people to review. So far, certainly with the people I've contacted and the deputies who I have spoken with, the interactions have been very positive. There's been a lot of friendly, for lack of a better description, happy folks communicating with us, happy to see us, appreciative of the efforts that we're making. The county sheriff's department, like law enforcement in general, across the region and really across the country, are all pretty much facing similar struggles. Being law enforcement in this day and age is not necessarily the sought after position it might have been, let's say, 30, 40 years ago, when some of us were getting into this career. There's a fair amount of, pressure, whether it be legal system or community concerns, whatever the case might be. So that does tend to limit or reduce the hiring pool for people who are willing to come into this line of work. And so we're all facing that struggle to a certain degree. So whether it's the sheriff's department hiring additional people in order to provide even a more enhanced service to Georgetown, or whether you try to, as they say, reconstitute the police department, there can be challenges in hiring people who want to do this job. Certainly quality people. You don't want to just put a warm body in a police car and hope that everything turns out okay. That's a recipe for trouble down the road. You really want to try to get the right people in the community doing the job that you want them to do in a professional, lawful, constitutional manner, courteous, respectful, but also decisive, knowledgeable, able to step in and restore order when things go south. That's what we do. We do a controversial job. I'm sure as you recognize, not every decision we make is gonna be open, welcome with open arms, but they necessarily, it doesn't mean there's a wrong decision. So that's kind of just a brief idea of what law enforcement is like these days. So whether you decide to reconstitute your department and hire a chief of police and go out there and try to find officers, or you go with us, and we're already heavily involved with hiring people and recruiting. And making sure that what we have to offer for applicants is attractive to them so that we can get the highest quality candidates that we can. And the sheriff's department at this point is been a significant pay bump within the last month or so, which we really do appreciate. And that's for our Colorado post-certified peace officers, people who are already certified with the state of Colorado as a peace officer. We've got that in place, and we're now pretty darn competitive, even with the metropolitan area. There will always be some that are going to be higher, but there's going to be some that are lower as well. So we're happy about that, and that makes, in my estimation, that makes us more attractive as we seek applicants. And if we were to have an IGA meeting folks on a full-time basis, one of the things we would be doing would be hiring additional deputy sheriffs. And one of the things that helps us hire those additional deputy sheriffs is the increase in pay. But let me tell you something, pay is not the only issue here. A lot of times pay comes in and people are happy for a month or two, and then other factors come into the equation. What about this? What about that? So this is where my bias comes in. And I have to tell you that I've only been with the sheriff department for not quite 5 months. My background is fairly significant in terms of law enforcement experience, but actually even the third week, about 5 months. So I've been learning a lot. I don't know everything. I'm hoping that what I have to pass along is valuable as well. But one of the things that attracted me to come to Clear Creek County was the sheriff and the undersheriff. They have been doing a tremendous work and putting in real effort to make this department the best it can be and to rebuild from the tragic last incident of about 3 years ago. In fact, probably half, or even maybe more than half of the department has turned over. That's how much change has occurred. The ones who stuck it out are committed and professional and deeply invested in this county. And the new ones coming on board are coming on board under the philosophies, of course, of the new sheriff. And he, and what he's trying to do is what attracted me to come here. And it's attracted me because I think I have some skills and things to offer and a lot to learn, but he's a professional. And that is really attractive. And what he, as the leader of the organization, is doing is making this the most professional organization that we can. That translates, I believe, to better service. And if you go with an IGA with the sheriff department, you, I think, get to take advantage of his efforts and his work in the department's direction over the last year and a half or a couple of years. But I'm proud to be part of that effort. And again, I won't tell you I know everything. I still have a lot to learn. So that's what I think is attractive. One of the things we think that we have to offer, and this is not, I'm not going to do a whole presentation on every little aspect, but the department already has the ability to manage evidence. It may not seem like a big deal, but properly managing, storing, and accessing evidence is really an important thing. Mistakes in that area can result in criminal cases being tossed out. As the judge well knows, if we make a mistake there, that's a problem. We already have significant administrative background in place with the sheriff's department because we are a full service agency. We have detectives. We have a records section with experience in how to properly manage records. Another area of sensitivity to the public, because if it's not managed correctly, we can find ourselves with a big spotlight on us. So these are all things that the Clear Creek County Sheriff's Department is already doing. And if you contract the department, this is what you also get in return. We're not having to build anything up at this point. We're just trying to make what we have right now and keep it better than it is. And I'll be the first to admit we can always do better. We are far from perfect. I think with the mark of an agency that's responsive and professional is the one that recognizes that it can do better and puts in the effort to do just that. And that's what we are about. But again, we are imperfect. If you're looking for that, I think we're gonna fall short to some degree. We're sure gonna try to give you the effort to help you have a good service. I guess at this point, rather than me going on and putting you to sleep, you may have some questions of me on law enforcement in general, on what we had to offer, what we don't offer, so forth.
So here's what I would love to do is take questions and comments at the end. I do want to draw everyone's attention to this sheet, because this sheet compares certain categories of service with Georgetown and then again with the county. So you can see some very brief, high-level comparisons. And Captain Rubin, you sent this great email clarifying the level of service that the county would offer, that you would have dedicated
Yes.
officers. Can you speak to that a little bit for everyone before we move on?
Yeah. What we were talking about, I think, and if not negotiating, just sort of presenting,
Yeah,
is that we had an ITA, the Georgetown. That it would involve 3 additional deputy sheriffs that would be absorbed into the sheriff department. And it might not necessarily be our new deputies who would be patrolling Georgetown. We might have actually the more veteran deputies patrolling Georgetown, just because of their familiarity with the community and so forth. So it would involve, let's say, 3 deputies. Now, realistically, and this is the same whether they're deputy sheriffs or they're police officers, 3 officers, 3 deputies is not enough to provide 24/7 coverage for any community. The math just doesn't work that way. You know, people have vacation, days off, they're sick, they're in training. You could probably give them 24-hour coverage for a short amount of time before the officers were so burned out that they weren't providing the service they need. And we recognize that. But 3 deputies is a fair amount. And they would be part of our agency. So not only do you get them, but all that comes with it is the other deputies working in the unincorporated areas of the county who are immediately available and work with each other and know who these guys and gals are and come in and work with each other effectively when the need arises to have help come in. If it's after the hours that the dedicated deputy sheriffs are working, the department, the sheriff's department is prepared to respond into Georgetown for incidents where there's immediate threat to life or property. We're not gonna walk away from that and tell you that we're not gonna respond. We will respond. Now, if you have a citizen who wants to, report a barking dog at 2 o'clock in the morning and your regular deputies who are dedicated to this through the contract are not available, okay, we're probably not gonna respond to that because we have other responsibilities in the unincorporated part of the county. And the county is big, relative to 380 square miles. They have a lot of areas to cover and other calls for service coming in. So I don't want to overstop. But the same, I have to say, the same would be true if you had your own police department, and let's say you had 3 officers that were trying to manage 24/7 coverage. In the past, as I understand it, and as it would be in the future, they too could not give you complete 24/7 coverage with that. That's just the reality of it. To actually have 24/7 coverage, it get pretty expensive because now you're talking a lot more than just 2 people. Do it. As an example, Idaho Springs, I believe when they are fully staffed, has 9 officers there. And so they can provide that 24/7 coverage within their city. They sometimes even have a couple officers working at one time, but not always. Sometimes they certainly do. I don't think they do it all the time. But that's the challenge of law enforcement. Does that answer what you're
I
looking?
think it does, and I just want to point out here on your chart, it says 24/7 patrol and 24/7 coverage. The coverage that we're talking about here would be in an emergency, correct? We'd have constant 911
Oh, yeah.
emergency coverage. The patrol coverage would not be 24/7, which is what I think Captain Rubin is referring
Yeah,
to.
I'm sorry, I should
No,
have.
that's all right. I was just wanting to make sure people knew.
Realistically, it just really can't be done with 3 people. But fact that we're one agent and we have other deputies who are always on duty 24/7 through the county, they can respond in. That's how the operation does work. And I think in a sense of professionalism and best practices and best services, you know, the county has a population of a little less than 10,000 people in total. So when you think of it this way, and you may not agree, that's okay, but sometimes it's better to consolidate efforts when you have that kind of population, because right now I think there are 4 different law enforcement agencies within a county of less than 10,000 people, you know, Empire, Georgetown, potentially unappropriated county in Idaho Springs. So some consolidation in that regard, I think, is healthy and beneficial. And again, you may disagree. I understand you may see advantages in having your own police department. I get it. I'm not here to argue with you. I'm just here to sort of present our view of things and to help you understand what we have to offer.
Thank you, I appreciate that. So Captain Rubin, what we're now going to do is listen to Dennis Durham, and he's going to talk about what is involved with reconstituting a Georgetown police force. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Would you tell, because we've heard it, will you please tell our stakeholders what your time frame would look like?
Okay,
Because
so
that'll be an important thing for Dennis too.
I don't know how to give you a precise time frame, but if you were to say September 1st, this is a go. We're already actively recruiting people to be deputy sheriffs in this county. We'd have to hit it harder, and we'd be hiring more people. And we would probably be looking at people who are already post-certified. Post means into the police academy and then successfully complete that training. If we don't get post-certified applicants, if we can get applicants who don't have any experience, it can be a very lengthy process to get them up to speed to where they can function individually as a law enforcement officer. So we're looking for people who already have that certification to attract that kind of a candidate. We think that our increased pay, the increased professionalism that's going on, the growth of the department investment can be. And we're also looking at something that you may have heard of and maybe not. Have anyone here ever heard of the FPPA? Some people have. This is a retirement plan that I enjoyed where I used to work. I used to work in Denver. And it's a very good defined benefit retirement plan. One of the things I think that keeps some agencies from retaining people for lengthy periods of time is that they don't see a future as they get older. Because they're preparing for, you know, they're raising their families. They are preparing for the eventual retirement, and they'd like to know that when the day comes, they give this up, that they have a comfortable way to live. By the time they retire, they may be beat up a little bit physically. You know, they're older. They probably do not want to go back to work if they can avoid it, but that can vary by person. But knowing that you have a defined benefit of pension is a big draw. So many agencies in Colorado do have FPPA. Some do not. Currently, the sheriff's department does not, but we are actively seeking it. And in fact, if it's accomplished, and this is it, I can't promise it, but the sheriff is working on it. If we get it in Prairie View County, we would be the first, as I understand, we would be the first sheriff to have FPPA. Generally speaking, it's been within municipalities. We're breaking that ceiling. We're going forward here in the county. And we're having some success so far. So that will be a draw to get those candidates in. But in answer to your question, the short answer is we have to recruit, we have to hire, we have to train. Once we're going to hire, and most likely you're going to get people who are post-certified. And then we get them on board, and then we must put them through field training. Just graduating from a police academy is not enough. So if you wanted to reconstitute your police department and you recruited people, and let's say they had been through an academy, or maybe they've even sponsored themselves to go through a local academy, and they've got the certificate, that's not enough. You can't take someone like that, put them in a police car and expect them to know how to really do policing. They have the foundation of it. They don't have the community familiarity. They don't have the experience. They have to go through the field training. The general practice in law enforcement and field training is about 3.5 months with a training officer in the car with them, constantly evaluating them, stressing them out with all kinds of evaluations. I've been there, done it, no fun, but it is part of the process. So even if we get people in, we're post certified, we get them hired, And we're trying to streamline our process to get people on board quicker, provided they're the right person. We still have to train them. So we would like to get it done as quickly as we can. I don't want to commit to an absolute specific period of time just yet. I don't think that's fair, and I'm not come back and say I was wrong. But I can assure you that we will do our best to get people on board as quickly as possible, providing they're the right person. Yes,
Traditionally, it seems like a lot of sheriff departments, they brought everybody up through corrections, they work in the jail, then they, if they liked them over a period of several years, then they would pay for their post certification. I think we usually be like that. So the hiring of post certified people ready to go is new, and like to bring somebody like you on was also, with all that experience, is also kind of just new, like to get experienced people in.
yeah, some sheriff departments mandate that people who are on patrol have to do a certain amount of time working in the jail first. We don't do that in Clear County. In fact, we're kind of doing a hybrid. We do have people who are coming through the jail that will eventually go to patrol. Sometimes, in fact, we've got a person who is assigned to jail right now, but in August, he is going to be going to a post-certified academy. With the idea being that when he graduates, and I say when, because I don't think it's if, I'm think positive, when he graduates, he's a post-certified deputy, he will come to patrol. But that's 4 months from early August. He's potentially the future of our organization, but we also have to deal with the present. And that's why, very frequently, and certainly in this case, we will be looking at currently certified people. Get them on board, hire, process, lead the backgrounds, all the things that go along with that. And then they go right into field training. Sometimes, and not always, sometimes officers or deputies with prior experience who are post-certified, of course, and they come aboard. In some cases, they demonstrate such proficiency in what they're doing that we can get them through an abbreviated field training program. That's not always the case. We give them the amount of time they need to be successful. But sometimes we just simply may identify someone who is catching on so quickly that they become more viable for solo patrol duties more quickly than some other folks. So we recognize that's a possibility as well.
Very good, thank you so much. So we will move to Dennis, and we're going to get to clarifying questions or comments that the panel may have and that also the audience may have. So Dennis will now let us know about what it's going to take to reconstitute a Georgetown Police Department.
Thank you, Georgia. I just wanted to say, leading up, just a little explanation. When we designed this process, it was so that we could have a proposal from the county. And then we could also look at what the reconstitution of the local police department would be. And I asked the task force to do a little bit of homework and some work ahead of time. Because being new to the town and also not being, experiencing what the Georgetown Police Department had gone through over the last few years, I thought it was important to take a step back and establish what some primary basic rules would be for what that police department would look like. So the task force did go through the work to establish some basic priorities of what that police department should be doing, not really based on what it was doing. Does that make sense to everybody? And so they put together, the task force put together a long list of things like patrol, administration, records management. This long list of things were priorities to what this new police department would look like. And so in a nutshell, after this list was put together, then I put together this structure of what the new police department would look like to meet those goals. And as a little bit of background about me, I've done this before. I've been in a community where the police department was unaffordable. The police officers that were working there were aging out and becoming more expensive because of their worker comp claims. They couldn't be patrol officers anymore. The town could not afford to have their own police department. And so I was able to negotiate a merger with another neighboring community. And it turned out to be a great thing, saved money, improved the police service in that community. And so I was able to come to this with a little of an idea of what the pitfalls were going to be and what to look for. So with that in mind, we put together a structure of what a police department would be at a minimum so that it was an affordable thing but definitely not at a structure that Captain Rubin was describing that the county sheriffs was providing for the Clear Creek County residents today. So that structure looked a little bit like this: 3 patrol officers, 144 hours of patrol per week, a police chief, a records management person, and some court administration costs that have to be reconstituted just like it was before. 2 officer shifts. They were scheduled heavily more on the weekends because that's when your high traffic was and where your call loads were. The cost for the personnel alone, I was estimating at about $528,295, which was in line with what our previous budget was for last year. And travel and training, fleet and equipment, services, all that stuff figured in with some inflationary rates. And so I was estimating that for next year, that would be about $667,037.
That's on your sheet, right down here, so you can compare your costs. Sorry, Dennis.
Yep, that's right. And then also there are gonna be some capital costs. We already have 4 vehicles that we have in our fleet. We've retained those vehicles. The county is now utilizing, I think, 2 of those vehicles right now currently, but those will come back if we reconstitute our police department. They are old. They're 8 and 9 years old, a piece, 2 and 2. So we would have to start replacing those over time. Our evidence equipment and locker is old and not up to par, so we would have to invest some money to update our evidence equipment. So I would budget $75,000 right out of the gate to update our evidence equipment and handling facilities. And then I would shift us over to a leasing program for our police vehicles, and I would start replacing those 1 a year for the next 4 years. As soon as you replace a police vehicle, you need to equip it and outfit it, and that's about 20 grand for each vehicle. So now we're at $7,500 and 20 for each vehicle, and that will become an annual thing going forward. So when you add that in, you're at about $770,000 for the first year. You can see that on your chart. I think is that right? Okay, so that's the cost thing, and that's very important. I think that's the number one thing that you're gonna have to consider when you're comparing, because everything that Eric said about the recruiting and everything that he said about the ramping up and the training and equipment, it's that plus a little bit more for starting your own police department, because you also have to go find a new police chief, right? And that police chief has to be a good fit. That police chief has to be recruited and hired first before you start recruiting these patrol officers, because that person has to be the person you count on hiring these new people that are gonna serve under that person. So that's critical. When I first came to the task force and said we could do it in 10 months, they looked at me and they held their breath because they didn't want to laugh me out of the room. But that's a very aggressive, and if we can do what Eric has said, they would try to find police officers that are already post-certified and trained and have some experience. We could possibly hit that 10 months, but if we had to find some new recruits somewhere, then we're looking more possibly 18 months to 24 months. So we're maybe on the outset looking at a 2-year window for starting up our own police department. The other intangibles that I hear when I talk with people in the community about starting up our own police department is we have to do that because we have to have a connection with those officers. They need to know us by name because that's what we're used to, right? And the only answer I have to that is, and I also have to say I have no bias in this because I am the town administrator. I report to the board of selectmen. If they say, Dennis, build your own police department, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do the best job I can to build that police department. If they say, Dennis, we want to go with the county, we think that's the best option, I'm gonna be the best contract manager for the town. I'm gonna make sure that Eric and his team and Sheriff Harris is doing the best job to serve the public here in Georgetown. But I also wanna say that if I say to Eric and his team, community policing is our #1 priority, and you need to know people in the community. I know Eric and his team are gonna become friends with you, and they're gonna be first name basis with the residents here. Just like my new police officers and my new police chief I'm gonna hire are gonna be community policing oriented. So that argument and that concern, I wanna alleviate if I can with anybody that's concerned about that, or anybody that's watching tonight on the Zoom. that would be priority number one, as it's established by the Board of Selectmen, they're my bosses, and I will make sure that's also one thing. The other thing I wanted to point out is that leadership means everything in this exercise, and by experience, I can vouch for that. So in working with Sheriff Harris, I see a quality law enforcement leader. And I trust that if we were to go with an IGA with the county, it would turn out well, and they would perform well. And I think that I'm very confident in my own abilities, and I'm confident that the Board of Selectmen has their mindset on delivering law enforcement services well. If Sheriff Harris leaves, I can't say that that's gonna be the case. And I don't think anybody would say that that's gonna be the case. I hope it would be, but I can't guarantee that. If I leave or if the Board of Selectmen changes, I don't think anybody here could say that will be the case. It's always gonna be in your leadership and who you have running the operation in your law enforcement agency. So that will be a crucial piece that you always are selecting quality and experienced leaders to lead your law enforcement agency. So however this turns out, when the Board of Selectmen in their deliberations, after the task force makes their recommendation, and after the board deliberates some more in the next couple of months, and they make a decision, whether it's going with the county or whether it's starting up our own police department, it's gonna be who's leading that effort and making sure that you're watching and making sure that they're living up to their commitment. So with that, I think, unless there's something else that I'm missing from that chart or the presentation.
No, okay, thank you, Dennis, that's great. So, any questions from the audience? Jeff, I see a hand in the back. Can you identify yourself, please?
I'm Dee Littleman.
Thank you.
I live up there, you know.
Okay,
So if you were going to do a new police force, is it a requirement that the police officers resides in Georgetown or in Clifton County? Or can they come to Denver? I mean, Georgetown Police Force.
As far as I know, that's up to the board to establish as a town policy, but right now, I think it's within 20 miles or 20 minutes. Is
It
that
was
what-
it was a 30-minute response.
It's pretty commonplace that any emergency first responder has to be able to respond to an emergency within a certain period of time. And 20 or 30 minutes is pretty common,
So they would have to live close by.
yes,
That's gonna be a factor in the crew.
absolutely, for sure.
That's, you know, a big deal.
Yes,
especially with work on I-70, sorry.
So to quantify, we did not have a requirement for the officers, we did have a requirement for the, in our last contract with our chief. I mean, I think that'd be the chief's decision on the officers, correct? But we are the ones that would decide the chiefs.
Well, so let's turn that to Captain Rubin. What is the county's residency or response?
Yeah, we are not required to live in Clear Creek County. We have a few people that do reside here in Clear Creek County. We have a lot of people, honestly, who live in the metro area. And they all have take-home vehicles, and if they are called out, they will respond. Of course, we also have people who are here 24/7. So those are people who are gonna be responding to emergencies and issues initially. If they get overwhelmed, we also depend on our partners, ISPD, Empire PD, State Patrol, whoever, and we do the same for them. They get overwhelmed, we come running. That's the kind of relationship you have to have when you don't have a Denver PD size organization that can pretty much handle anything thrown its way.
Thank you.
I will say this, tell me to shut up if you've had enough of it. Denver used to have a residency requirement. They got rid of it. And when they got rid of it, they found that their applicant pool expanded considerably. Many potential officers who already had prior experience, didn't want to live in Denver for any number of reasons. But they were highly confident, wanted to work in Denver with all their heart, but just didn't want, maybe their families growing up in a certain area or whatever the case might be. They had a school they liked, and their kids would always go into school, and they didn't uproot all that just to work in Denver. So we found the applicant pool had expanded. Had residency been a requirement for me to work for the Clifton County Sheriff's Department, I probably would not be leaving. I'm not sure, frankly, that I could afford a home in this area and maintain what I already own. I mean, something would have to give. And, whatever that's worth, and that's not an insult, that's not meant to be
No.
detrimental.
Yeah, it's very, it's great. Dennis, did you ever come in?
I just, for what it's worth, my view is that I like the incentives programs versus a mandate, so if we want to attract quality officers, I would promote to the board to consider some kind of incentives for housing to get people who wanna live in our town, versus saying if you wanna be an officer to work here, you have to live here.
Yes,
Tom Elliott.
Tom Elliott, yes, thank you.
Is there a mileage requirement with the Clear County Sheriff's Office?
You know what, my guess is there is, I wish I could come before you and tell you exactly what it is, I have complete ignorance. I can tell you that I live in Denver. And, usually it takes me just driving along the speed limit, which I try to set the example. On a good day, maybe 50 minutes, maybe an hour. Now, if I'm turning on lights and siren and going just as quickly as I can safely do so, I can cut that down quite a bit. I can tell you that, back in March, we had an officer involved shooting. And it took up a number of our personnel to manage that scene. They're very complex. They're very detailed. You want to do it right. There's a lot at stake here. Everything from the lawful aspects of it to community perception and so forth. So we want to do it right. But because of that, and because it took a number of our people out of service, essentially, people were called in from their days off, their vacation, or whatever the case may be, and they came around. So it can be done. They were there for us.
Thank you, yes.
I have a question.
And you're
The
Robert
IGA is for, excuse me, I'm Robert Smith.
Thank you.
Live here in Georgetown. The IGA is for a set number of officers and set coverage. How is a surge event? And,
A surge in it.
let's say the blizzard of 2026.
Oh, boy.
And town is packing up with 1,000 extra cars on the streets, and we need additional law enforcement. That's a surge event.
Right. Well, you're already predicting bad news. I'm glad to hear that. But I will tell you this, if deputy sheriffs in Georgetown, who are ordinarily designated to work in there, get overwhelmed, we're going to help. It's one big agency, well, one small agency, but bigger than everyone else in the region, I guess, it says, we're not huge funding. We'll help each other. That would be unique. But when you look at that, it's a threat to life or property, an imminent threat or immediate threat, and we need to respond accordingly. Again, if you have 1,000 people coming into town and somebody's upset because so much chicken is 5 in the morning, and it's past the time when our people are ordinarily working, we're probably not gonna come respond to that until the next designated deputy is not due. But for crisis situations, we're a team. And everybody helps everybody.
So Dennis, can I just turn to you as the person talking about if Georgetown reconstituted its police force, how would that look?
Well, I was gonna add, I think there's two options here, and I think Eric's right on the path there. If there's a snow event that impacts everybody in the canyon, right? Then everybody's fending for themselves, and we have 3 deputies designated to Georgetown, and they are primarily patrolling in Georgetown, then their first priority is gonna be Georgetown. If, however, we have an accident in a community where it's just traffic everywhere, let's say it's Empire. And the car's on fire and it's a horrendous event, as we know about, that just happened about a month ago, right on the highway.
Yes.
Then those 3 Georgetown deputies are going to Empire, no question about it, because they're called there. But it's gonna be the same way if it's a Georgetown PD, right? If the Georgetown PD reconstituted and we have 2 or 3 officers working the shift that night, and there's a catastrophic event in Empire, they're going. And that's the way it's gonna happen, whether it's a deputy or it's Georgetown PD. We are not gonna get on the radio and say, sorry, we can't go because we have to have a speed trap over here on 6th Street. We can't go over to Empire. We're going. And that's the way law enforcement works in our region. We help our partners when something catastrophic happens. and they help us. Whether it's a Georgetown patch on their arm or whether it's a county patch on our arm, we help each other. If it is the chicken crossing the road, and we dare to call them and say, hey, come on over, we need 3 units to back us up. I guarantee you, I'm gonna hear from Sheriff Harris Monday morning, he's gonna call me and say, Dennis, we need to have a chat. Okay, so that's just the way it works. Law enforcement helps each other out, and we have to be reasonable about what the call is.
Thank you.
And just so you know, even long before I got here, my understanding is that's exactly how it worked. When you did have a police department, Georgetown officers would leave the town limits because, you know, Clear Creek County Sheriff needed help in Empire or further up I-70. And this is just, here's my bias coming in, so read it for what it is. In law enforcement, we develop relationships with our fellow officers, but they're mean life or death. That's how close we can get to each other. It's just known, we're gonna be there for each other. And in communities such as this, you know, when you're closest cover, you know, assistance, when you feel threatened, I mean, you're in trouble. It could be somebody wearing any patch. We know that we're gonna be there for each other. That just goes part and parcel with law enforcement. And it won't change no matter who is policing in your community. We help each other out. Because honestly, we want to see tomorrow just like everybody else.
Thank you. Yes, the gentleman in the yellow, it's Jim.
I'm Tim Brewer, I also live up the hill.
With that other one, yeah.
I understand the emergencies and the high visibility needs of working in an agency, but one of the things that I look at that this town is lacking in is code enforcement. And is that something that the county sheriffs would be involved in, or is that something that we need the Georgetown Police Department?
It's interesting you asked about that, and I'm not sure I can give you a complete answer tonight, but Sheriff Department does have what you see are community enforcement officers. If you see the trucks with the sheriff's insignia on them, they're handling animal control issues, they're handling parking related issues, that sort of thing. I think that is definitely worth discussion. Now, a couple things can happen here. Those community enforcement officers, if they were part of this IGA, you know, currently they would be enforcing state statute and model traffic code adopted by Clear Creek County. If you wanted them to be enforcing Georgetown's town codes, that can happen. I mean, if in fact we agreed to that, they could be authorized to enforce those. But what comes with that, of course, is now a court has to hear those. Because if they're enforcing town ordinances rather than state statutes or county ordinances, the judge can speak for this better than I can, but that could potentially, I think, require maybe a separate court system to manage that, or maybe allowing the current court system to do both. I don't know how that would work.
Currently, we do both.
You do both, okay.
I mean, for example, during Christmas market, there was a lot of parking tickets issued, those all came to me.
Okay. Now, were they, for the Christmas market, were they written on town ordinances, were those state statutes written by our?
They were written on the county, primarily the county, because they were the sheriff's office,
Right,
they were primarily written on the county ordinances.
I guess what I'm saying is you want an actual town ordinances enforced rather than the state statutes. That's more of a kind of a municipal court environment, I think. I'm not saying that you couldn't do the both, but you probably had to be authorized to do it or someone else would. It's just,
When Georgetown used to have a municipal board, and I think until the police department was dissolved, obviously, with
Should there be
municipal justice here, and so, but I think, that's. They only have court once a month, and it's pretty, the vast majority of stuff comes to my court,
right,
and county boards.
So Dennis, did you want to respond to that in terms of the municipal court?
I think it's just one more thing that we would have to talk to the county about. I've already had conversations with the assistant Colton.
assistant county manager.
Yeah, so I've already had conversations with them about what that would take. The way we code enforcement now is on a complaint basis. We don't drive around town looking for things and making lists. So if somebody calls and says, hey, my neighbor's not mowing their lawn, they haven't done it for 3 months, we go out and look and we issue a citation. We would do that with our newly constituted police department, just like we would do that with the new county sheriff's IGA. And when the sheriff was visiting with the task force, he just clearly said, yes, we can do that for you. We would have to work that out as part of the IGA, and it might cost a little bit more money. We also have to keep in mind that if we did that, we'd have to figure out, are we gonna do it under the county municipal court or our municipal court reconstituted, which would cost us a little bit more money. So it's just all something we would have to figure out as a detail to an IGA or reconstituted police department.
Thank you. There were a couple of comments, I'm sorry, excuse me, Tom, 1 second. That the Board of Selectmen have addressed a couple of these things prior to my getting on board. So did either one of you want to speak to this?
Amanda, I would just kind of caveat for residents that code enforcement has been on the forefront for us for a long time, and it has been logistically challenging, obviously. And there's a lot of options out there, no matter what direction we take, but the town administrator is already taking steps with some code enforcement issues that we're aware of, and the board it's not lost on us that it's a big deal. So we appreciate the feedback, and we'll, as soon as we can figure it out, we will.
The fine for engine muffler is now up to $1,000.
That's a,
That would fund the entire.
Not, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's in the morning during the snowstorm.
yeah, oh, no, for sure.
Tom, you had a comment or a question?
I did.
I'm sorry, I had to.
Well, so Dennis, what you, I think, just said is that the code enforcement can also be enforced by the county laws and not the individual
Correct.
ordinance.
Correct. It's a matter of us getting together and deciding who's going to enforce it, and then deciding which ordinances are going to enforce. And it's just getting it together.
Okay, I had another question. Does your total estimated cost for the police force, does it include money for judges and prosecutors and courtrooms?
It
Did you take
includes,
that in
it
consideration?
includes money for court administration, but it does not include a judge.
Or a prosecutor,
Because you'd have to have,
because you have to pay a prosecutor.
you have to pay those people. if
But
you
that-
have a police force.
That money was already in the town's budget as a separate line item, so I didn't address that in this exercise.
So would that be the same for the county then? If we went with the county, do we also have to reconstitute? No, we don't, because we would do the county level. Got you.
So if it comes to the county, it just comes to me,
Okay,
and I
But we would
pay
still,
through the state. But it would also have to, the district attorney's office would have to agree to prosecute those cases.
okay, thank you.
but we would still have to, instead of the money going to our own municipal court, we would have to shift it towards that.
Got you.
The town budget for 2025 had $66,000 budgeted for court costs, which we haven't expensed, obviously, this year. But that's like roughly what it costs.
Rich,
Sparrows, Ward 3 Selectmen. I'm trying to wrap my head around, dedicated officers. And how does that work? Like, if you're part of the sheriff's department and the other end of the county, a lot of folks go on PTO or a training event. How does that? If it, are these like patrol officers and a sergeant based here, they're gonna be here for 40 hours a week, or is it? That we're just paying to add more officers onto the sheriff's department that are gonna patrol from Empire to Loveland Pass? How is that dedicated? How do you define that?
Yeah, I think I can answer that to some degree, hopefully to some satisfaction on your part. I envision this, but we would have to have further discussion. If we hire 3 additional deputy sheriffs, I'm not convinced at this point in time that I want those actual new people being the people who are patrolling Georgetown. I might more strongly consider, but I could change my mind, putting those folks out in the unincorporated areas so that they learn the whole county more effectively, and we take some of our more experienced people and have them working in Georgetown. Now, that may not be the case in every situation. That's sort of how I saw it. I thought maybe the more experienced folks might be the ones that was not transitioned over to focus on Georgetown. But for the hours that they're being paid, the expectation is they're working in Georgetown. That's the expectation for the hours they are assigned. That's their job. But as has been stated, if a threat to life or property is occurring down the road, they may have to leave the town limits, as did and as will a Georgetown police officer put under the same situation.
So can I comment to that, because I think I heard a bit of a different piece of that question as well. My understanding through the presentations that we were given was that those 3 dedicated officers, their hours would be dedicated to Georgetown. So it wouldn't be a rotating list of the sheriff's deputies patrolling Georgetown each on their own. It would be 3 deputies in Georgetown that are based in Georgetown, patrolling Georgetown. Always here, not randomly wandering.
Cause that's not what it sounds like. I mean, community policing is so much about relationships and seeing that those same old mugs. You know, both in the community and, in the law enforcement vehicles. And then another.
But wait, that is what it is.
Yes,
It is?
yes.
But I think.
But not during the training phase.
They're always just trying to say that what's gonna happen is they may get called to another call outside of the town. But then they're gonna come back here.
And then we can rely on the sheriff as well. So like your question, when they have PTO, when they have times like that where we would lose one of those 3. Then the sheriff, if we are partnered with them, is sticking one of their people in to cover that PTO, to provide that extra person that we needed, so they get their time off, so they do that. So that person might be a switch there.
I understand, but the sheriff is over the whole county. So to me, it's very hard to say, oh no, but these are dedicated to Georgetown, so it's gonna be tough for him to keep that. I mean, keep it that way if there's a need somewhere else in the county. Like right now, how many officers is the sheriff's department trying to hire, and how long have those openings been there?
Well, we're continually hiring. So we're trying to overhire at this point, actually. We budgeted for a certain amount. We have had attrition like most agencies have, so in preparation for that and recognizing that, we're trying to overhire. And if we know that Georgetown is coming aboard with us, we're gonna overhire even more. But through the training phase, those new deputies who may not be the ones who ultimately are patrolling Georgetown full time, but those new deputies are gonna be with a field training officer, learning the county in its entirety. And when we feel that person is ready to go out on their own, they have solo status, that's when we start putting people in Georgetown. They're probably, well, I doubt it would be that new deputy. That's my sense of it. I think it'd be,
The agreement would be to have them dedicated officers here.
Here.
So, but if there's something that happens, they're gonna go no matter whether it's a Georgetown officer or a sheriff deputy. The agreement would call for the sheriff's deputies to be here for that time that's agreed upon.
Their schedule would be like Deputy Smith is in Georgetown.
Right, but here's another part of my question, so for $633,000. If we sign the IGA, are we like, if we hire our own police chief, we know when that person's starting, we know. How to budget for it, we're paying for that as the officers come on, but how does that work with the sheriff's department? If we sign a 1-year IGA for $630,000 and it takes 10 months before we have that dedicated time, are we giving paying the whole check right off the
No, I'm gonna let
bat,
Dennis.
or
respond to this.
how does that piece of it work in an IGA? So I know like with the fire department, we do
yeah,
with
I would say-
2 or 3 payments and that sort of thing.
That would, and Sheriff Harris covered this a little bit when he was, at the beginning, but. If they had to ramp up, which they talked about, and I think that's where this year came in possibly.
So,
If they had to ramp up when we signed this IGA, then it would be prorated based on the number of deputies they had here. But it sounds like Eric is talking about they're already recruiting to the point of getting to the recruitment. The same thing with us, right? So if we hire a police chief, we're not spending the $770,000 out of the gate. Right, you're spending $150 or whatever it costs to hire a police chief. But I think, Rich, you
I
would,
would like to see how that ramps up.
well, you would, because you would have to approve the IGA.
Of course, but I think other folks would that wanna
Yes,
know how that works.
so, and then what, but you're stumbling on I'm not stumbling, you are onto a very important point, because even though they're dedicating 3 deputies, let's say they're the greatest deputies in the operation, they're gonna get promoted. And they might get promoted to the east as sergeants or something.
Sure.
And then we don't see them again because they're so good. And then they have to backfill for that. That's a good thing though, right? We want good ones to get promoted but our people get promoted to the same town, right? We would never see them leave the town unless they leave to go to a different agency.
Which they could do.
Which they could do, and
Right.
probably that will happen,
Yeah,
because,
absolutely.
you know, my experience has been in small towns, we train and lose them, because they get bored, I mean, we have, what, 40 calls a month? And they wanna go wrestle all the criminals, they wanna pull their papers and do the young ones want to fight, so, they want the action, so you're always gonna run into that churn. You always are gonna have that issue, and that's what I talk about leadership, you have to have the leadership at the top of the organization. Consistency, absolutely. So you're onto something. That's the key to running a good law enforcement agency. You have to be cognizant of those.
Or any business or.
Sure, let me just, chip in here a little bit. I think that, this is the sheriff's decision, I don't make that for him. But I think it's reasonable to phase in the costs as people are brought on board, and then we start actually assigning someone within the town for their 40 hours a week. And then at that point, we're meeting, you know, the first portion of the IGA. And then when a second one comes on board, we've expanded. And then as things occur, the cost phases up. Now I throw that out there not because I'm the final authority, I'm not. But it is certainly something I think that we would be discussing and the sheriff would consider to make sure that it's a fair assessment. Because as Dennis points out, if you hire a police chief, it's gonna take quite a while to get somebody actually out here as a patrol officer functioning on their own. And then when that person does achieve that solo status out there, your cost went up, right? So now you hired someone. And now what started out as $180,000, now 200 and whatever $1,000. And then when you bring the second or third person on board, the same thing happens. So I think it's a reasonable,
I would like to see it laid out, before the board made any final decision, just because, it's not just a final price tag for 1 year or about 3 years or 5 years, but it's when there are transitions and say 2 of the 3 officers are promoted or go somewhere else that are dedicated to Georgetown, how does that work then? Does that, we get the same coverage if you don't have the officers patrol officers to?
I think that if for some reason we weren't meeting the contractual obligation of an IGA, you know, to provide 2 deputies, and suddenly a tornado hits and 3 of our deputies' homes are wiped out and have to move away. You know, if we can't meet what we've obligated to, then there probably has to be a downward transition until we can meet them in full capacity, and that seems reasonable. Now, I'm not a lawyer, I can't write contracts. I think Bolton Roloff, who's the deputy county manager, and Peter Lickman, who is the county attorney, are quite capable of putting together an IGA that you would find agreeable. But what I can't do is commit us to that until, you know, the person with the real authority, who is the sheriff, makes that decision. It strikes me on the surface as reasonable.
I think it's a reasonable request, however, in theory, I don't believe that the county or any agency or even Georgetown can say, hire this person and not turn around and charge Georgetown the minute that person walks in the door. So we're going to for 3 additional officers as they're being field trained and perhaps not even getting coverage at that point. And I don't know that, and these are some of the questions that we need to work out within that IGA.
Right. Yes.
I don't think the county can afford, or let's just say $80,000, an officer, deputy walks in $1,000. I don't think you can afford to give that $80,000 from the county, let's just say 3 months for field training. And not be turning around and asking Georgetown for that money.
You may be right, and I'm not, this is what I'm not gonna admit to, because there are things I don't understand. But if you look at it from a different standpoint, as soon as you hire an officer who is not trained, you're paying that
Absolutely,
officer.
absolutely.
Well, let me throw another wrench in this, just because you choose to hire your own, to start your own police department, I can't guarantee you I'll hire police officers in 2 years.
Right.
So if you think of me, Dennis, start up our own police department again, 2 years from now, we could be staring at each other and I might say, I don't know where we're gonna get a police chief. Because you've been through this, right? Yeah, you tried to hire a police chief. and it didn't go well, I think, didn't go well.
But those circumstances were not
Correct.
financial, that
Yeah,
was an entirely different picture, so that, let's not.
But it does
Yeah.
bring up something I want to
I'm
comment.
just saying the recruiting atmosphere right now is tough. It's
Okay,
tough.
so on this chart, these numbers at the bottom are assuming full employment of everyone. To your point. So I think, yeah, we were, told that the county would give us dedicated officers. We know that these are the gross costs if everyone's in place. But we all know we're not gonna start out with everybody in place. So there obviously would have to be some kind of rolling hiring or staging of payments or something.
Yeah, it has
It has
to be put into the IGA, because.
Of course.
We had an
That's our-
IGA with
yeah,
the sheriff's.
that's our
department.
circuit.
So when we couldn't live up to our end of the bargain, that IGA had.
And also to be
Correct.
really clear about something, no decision has been made here. There's no IGA that's gonna happen. We're in the process of throwing this information out, so everybody can have it, give feedback, and we can move forward in an informed and blanket manner. Dennis, do you wanna say
I
something?
just wanted to, before we wrap up today,
Yeah.
because you attended this today, we're kind of hoping you will act as our eyes and ears to the community. If somebody asks you, hey, you went to this, what did you learn? So this FAQ that we're handing out this evening is gonna be on the website tomorrow, as Georgia said. But when you look through this quickly, was there anything that jumped out at you as, hey, I wanna know, I don't understand this, or what does this mean? If you go home with this and something comes up, you know where I'm at, please reach out to me or anybody on the board or on the task force. And then also, this chart is also very helpful, it boils it down to some really basic things. The supervision is the police chief for the town. The sheriff's department, this IGA would have access to the sheriff, the captain, the patrol sergeant that he discussed. The patrol officers under these scenarios would be 3 dedicated in each scenario. And then the support personnel behind each one, that's pretty self-explanatory. George also talked about the difference between 24/7 patrol and 24/7 coverage. And by the way, under the Georgetown Police Department, under the coverage, when we don't have our own personnel doing it, it's the sheriff's department that's cover those. And that's also covered in the FAQ. Under special events, traffic patrol and community policing, under the town's police department, when we have to have police officers go to like the 4th of July stuff, we're paying overtime for that, we have to call them in for that. And then the sheriff's department has included that in their proposal. And then you see the costs associated with that, I think that's pretty self-explanatory. And the reason that I have broken that to a 5-year projection as well, and we all know projections are projections, right? We could have tariffs on police services and that could ruin everything, but this is our best guess for what it's gonna cost the town for a 5-year contract and having a police department. And the reason I wanna leave with this is because the costs are important. And the costs are important because whether we're paying the county or whether we're paying our own department, this has to be balanced with everything else we do.
That's right.
So if we're repairing your streets, if we have to pay more and more for police services, we can't do more and more in streets, or we can't do more and more in parks. It affects everything that we do. So we have to be judicious in how we're attacking this work and how it affects everything else. So it's very important on the decisions that we make here and how it affects everything else that the town does for our residents. So I hope that you'll see this on the website, and if somebody asks you, you can direct them to the website starting tomorrow afternoon, and they can go get this for themselves. And you can kind of relay what you've heard tonight, and if they have additional questions, you can send them to everybody you see here today, including Captain Rubin. He's very good at answering questions from the county.
And there's this questionnaire that you can also fill out. You can also, as I said earlier, town clerk at townofgeorgetown.us. And administrator, police judge, have your selectmen's emails. We would love comments by Friday. So if you're out there and talking to people, let people know that Friday, we would really appreciate everything. Before we wrap this up, are there any other questions from the audience members or anyone online, Dennis, that maybe wants to ask a question? No, anybody here?
Thank you for all the time you put in already,
Oh,
and I appreciate it. This seems like a very transparent process, and I'm just disappointed we didn't have more folks here. Thank you all.
Thank you guys for coming.
thank you very much
Appreciate
for
all of you.
coming. Robert, did you?
Dennis, just clarification, one thing you're saying, we spend too much, the streets could get worse than they are.
Oh, I also want to thank Captain Rubin and Dennis for your time on this, and thank you very much, all of you. Thank you.
Thank you.